Welcome to the Create Your Empowered Self podcast. This how-to podcast is focused on empowering you to live your best life by incorporating the principles of the law of attraction, NLP, meditation, and other spiritual teachings. I'm Jeannie Hall, a certified NLP practitioner and creative empowerment coach. Let's get you empowered. Hello, and welcome to the Create Your Empowered Self podcast. This is episode 11, Possibility. So first of all, I want to thank everyone who has been listening to this podcast or checking out my website, leaving reviews and comments. I so appreciate that. From the bottom of my heart, I really, really do. So thank you for everyone who listens to this. I really do appreciate you, and I really do hope that this is helping you in some way. So I'm going to share the Google definition of the word possibility because I found it very apt to what we're going to be talking about today. And the definition is a thing that may be chosen or done out of several possible alternatives. And so today, this podcast is meant to reach out to any of you who may be struggling with a situation or with a part of your life that seems completely out of control. And a lot of us have times in our lives where we feel that way. We feel completely overwhelmed by our lives. And sometimes it's like one part of our life, or maybe it's several parts, and we're just overwhelmed by the whole thing. So I really hope this helps you today. And when we get into that state of overwhelm where we don't even know what to do, we just freeze and we feel stuck, it also incites a whole host of other negative emotions like fear and lack and scarcity, like sadness and depression, worthlessness sometimes, or even despair. And first of all, if that is you and you're in any of those states right now, what I want you to consider is the possibility of what I'm about to say. So please hear me. You are stronger than any problem. You can figure this out. You are loved and lovable. You are so powerful. You are beautiful. You're not just smart. Within you lies the wisdom of the ages. And sometimes, most importantly, you are never, ever alone. Now, the things I just stated are the truth. But if you feel yourself questioning any of what I just said, what I'd like you to do is to try this. Be willing to consider the possibility that those things that I just said are the truth. Now, you don't have to be certain. You don't have to be 100%. You can have your doubts. But I'd like you to consider the possibility. Just open that door a crack, that what I just said might possibly be true, even if part of you don't believe it. So, I believe that we are all more than the sum of our parts, because we have bodies, but we are much more than our physical bodies. And we have minds, but we are much more than what our minds say to us. We are spiritual in nature, and as such, possibility is our middle name, because we have unlimited potential. We were created for the divine purpose of expanding all that exists in the universe. And we're creators too. We're co-creators with the universe, with God. And if we take a moment to slow down and to just breathe, we can realize that what we do and who we are is actually up to us. It's a choice. So God or the universe or source or whatever you call that higher divine power gave us this beautiful gift. And that gift is free will. Free will enables us to see every possibility that we want to see. Each day, every day, we all make choices. We make them all day long. We choose to get out of bed or not in the morning. We choose to eat breakfast and what that breakfast will be, or we may choose not to eat anything at all. We choose to do what we do with ourselves all day. Not to say that there aren't going to be influences on us during that day. And if you have people you're responsible for taking care of, your choice to stay in bed may get interrupted. If you work outside of your home, you may have people who tell you what to do all day, or at least at the beginning of your day. And if you're a manager or you own your own business, you may feel like you have lots of things you have to do to keep things running smoothly. But that energy doesn't feel very good, does it? So this is what I'd like you to do if you're in any of those positions. Remember that even within all of those different choices and different situations and different influences and pushes and pulls on you, you always have possibilities and you always have choices that you can make within each circumstance. So let's look again at that definition of possibility. A thing that may be chosen or done out of several possible alternatives. Remember, this is a thing that may be chosen, right? And you always have several possible alternatives. What happens to many of us is we get stuck in one situation because our minds will tell us that we can only have one outcome, or we can only do one thing, because if we don't, then all this horrible stuff will happen to us. And the problem is, that's not always true. In fact, a lot of the time it's not true. Our minds are there to protect us and to tell us that the only way we'll be safe and the only way we'll be able to stay alive and in any way safe and protected is if we only do what our minds warn us to do or not to do. So constantly our mind will tell us, oh, no, don't do that. That's scary. We haven't done that before. Even if that's what you'll have to do to be happy, or that's what will actually be the catalyst of change in your life. But you can always outsmart your own mind, and you can always tell your brain to shut up. I'm going to do this. And that will help you a lot if you're feeling stuck. And that'll help you a lot if you're feeling overwhelmed. So this is the best way to defeat those feelings of overwhelm and negativity, is to just step back, take a breath, slow down, and realize you do have a choice, always. Maybe something in your life has not turned out the way you expected it would or hoped it would. Maybe tragedy has happened or illness has happened. Maybe the stress and just general busyness of your day-to-day stuff is masking the fact that you do get to decide what you do with your life. You get to decide what you do from moment to moment. Someone in your life may not like the choices that you make, that's true, but the choice is always yours. So if you find yourself in a negative space, pause, reflect, take a minute to look at where you are. And if you're unhappy, discover why you're unhappy. Really question it. Look at every aspect. Look at every possibility you have. Not what someone might tell you you might have, but all the actual possibilities. So let's do an example to help out. Let's say you want to pursue a certain dream, but you're not. Or maybe you got to a certain point in that dream and you hit a snag. And so now everything is stalled and you don't know what to do. Let's look at that. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example from my own life. And I'm an author, and that's kind of what started me off on my own little path. So I'm going to give you an example of writing and publication. So when I first discovered my love of writing, I wrote just for the sheer delight I found in putting my words together in creating stories. And I didn't even type it at the start. I just hand wrote the words in a stenography pad with a blue ink pen. So I had this idea for a story, and it was a Harry Potter fanfic, actually. And I just had to get it out of me. I had to. And it was like a birth in some ways. I didn't want to just create this thing. I needed to create it. It was like this constant pull at me, and it would wake me up in the middle of the night with ideas. I just had to get it written down. And in my case, I knew it would never be published for any kind of monetary gain, because as a fanfic, it couldn't be legally, and I would never do that to Harry Potter creator Jo Rowling. She's one of my inspirations. But I wanted to tell the story just the same. I ached to tell it. And at first, I told no one about this. It was just for me and for my own sense of joy and accomplishment. And then my husband caught me jotting stuff down in that stenography pad, and he asked to read it. And I hesitated and called it silly. And a lot of us do this, guys. We'll have some momentous dream that just fills us up, and it lights us on fire, and it makes us feel amazing and alive. And then instead of sharing it with someone, especially someone we love, a lot of times we'll hide it because we're scared. And who knows what we're scared of? Maybe it's their reaction. Maybe it's fear of failure. Maybe it's that someone will laugh at us. And so what if they do, right? Who cares? If it makes you happy, it makes you happy. But that fear tends to stop us. And what I really feel now, and if I could go back and talk to that version of myself, I would tell myself, doing what you enjoy is never silly, right? And to quote the late, great Dr. Wayne Dyer, feeling good is feeling God. So, yeah, just saying. So my husband kept bugging me about this. He kept persisting, and he was really curious. And so finally I relented, and I let him see what I had written. And I explained to him that it was my version of Harry Potter Book 6, which at that point had not yet been released. And he read over the few pages I had written, and he said 6 magical words to me. "You should type this up, babe." And it was like, ha ha ha, right? I was so blown away by his encouragement. I don't know what I was expecting, but he encouraged me. So that's exactly what I did. I went and typed up what I had. And then I wrote a lot more, because once I got on the keyboard on the computer, things just flew. So I started out with 7 handwritten pages, and I ended up with over 200 pages and 18 chapters. Oh, hell yeah. I was onto something now, and I knew it. And my hubby loved it. So I published it on a fanfic website just for fun, and also to kind of see what others thought of it. And I was so thrilled when they liked it. And I became completely addicted and hooked to writing. And then I decided that I wanted to go out on my own and actually write something that was just mine. And that's kind of the time period that I started writing for real. But when I started to do that, I ran into fear. I had a lot more hesitation. Because once I did that, I realized that what I really wanted to do was write for a living, because I loved it so much. I thought, how great would it be now that I've discovered this love that I have? I discovered that I love writing. How cool would it be to turn that into something I can make a living off of, right? That's the dream, right? It would be so cool. But then, of course, there's more to it than that. Was it cool and amazing that I discovered some activity that both challenged me and gave me huge amounts of joy? Yes. Was it cool that I had tied that joy to a bunch of stuff I didn't actually have control of? For me, not so much, right? That was a little bit of a snag. And the reason I say this is because to get published is the dream of many of us authors out there. And I personally wanted to see my words in print on actual paper, even though print books are kind of slowly disappearing. They may not disappear altogether, but there's certainly fewer of them than there used to be. And I had this dream of having my own book in my own hand with my name on the cover. I wanted to be the creator of something unique and special, and I wanted to see others enjoy my creation. And I also wanted to be able to write passionately every day, which meant I wanted my passion to also be financially lucrative enough to support me full time. And it's a beautiful dream, and a lot of authors have that very dream. And it's also a possibility that can absolutely come true, and has, for quite a few authors out there. But something that many of us authors find out is that writing for a living isn't always that sweet dream we originally envisaged for ourselves. And the reason why is because the traditional publishing industry is shrinking. So if our original dream was to see our paper book in brick and mortar bookstores, which are also shrinking, that can be a challenge. The traditional publishing industry is also highly subjective. It's kind of like figure skating for people who like sports. Yeah, there are points for technical accuracy, but there are also points for artistry. And that's why you might see one Olympic judge give a drastically different score than another might on the exact same performance. And the same is true in the publishing world. So in an attempt to become traditionally published, which I thought was what you should do, right? And a lot of us authors think that's really the only way to be published, and that you won't be respected if you do any other thing than become traditionally published. So because of that, I entered a national contest back in 2014. And up to that point, I'd entered some smaller contests. I'd done a few things. But that time I entered one that went to a national level. And the deal was that the top overall winner of all the different genres would receive a contract for publication. And at that point, I'd been writing for a few years, and I thought, I'm ready for this. I can do this. I'm going to put it out there. I've won a few smaller contests. I've gotten honorable mentions in some contests. I want to go out there and see what happens. And the company that was running this contest is a very well-known company for selling romance books. They're actually a household name. And if I said them, you would know immediately who I'm talking about. So I entered under the genre of romantic suspense in this contest. And the next few weeks were incredible. I received some wonderful feedback and became one of the top 25 finalists overall. And then they cut down the finalist list down to the top 10, and I made that list too. And I got really excited. And the reason is because one of the best things about this contest was that even if you didn't win, and only one person could win overall, the various editors of the different genres would frequently offer you a contract if you were up on the finalist list. And I was a top 10 finalist, so I was super excited. And even though another author won overall, I was still the top finalist in the romantic suspense genre that year. And I was on cloud nine. I started expecting to get a call. And I kept hearing about all these other finalists who were receiving contracts, and they were announcing it and tweeting it out on Twitter and putting it on Facebook. And so I'm waiting by my phone with bated breath. But the call never came. And a few weeks passed, and I eventually contacted the head editor of my genre, someone who had originally cheered me on during the contest, only to receive the news that no romantic suspense contracts were issued or offered to any contestants that year. And I was greatly disappointed. But this is where I had to really look at my dream and decide what was truly important to me. Kind of the bare bones of it, so to speak. I had to realize that there are many different ways to follow the same dream. Yes, being published by a nationally known publisher was one way, but it certainly isn't the only way. There are smaller companies who sell both paper books and ebooks, and that was the route I decided to take. There are also smaller companies that do only ebooks, and then there is self-publishing, a route I also took later on. And for myself personally, I decided that what I really loved was the writing above and beyond all the other trappings. And yes, it would have been nice to make a living just from that. I'm not going to lie. But God and the universe had different plans for me. And those plans are things that I am tremendously grateful for now. In hindsight, I see that if I had only become a traditionally published author who was writing book after book after book, I never would have discovered what I needed to discover about myself, which was more than that. And there's nothing wrong with becoming, a lucratively paid, traditionally published author or a self-published author. There are self-published authors who are making a living hand over fist. They're doing great. There's lots of people who are able to succeed in this in different ways, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, there was more. So much more. So am I a traditionally published author with a paperback book with my name on it? Yes. You'll see the picture if you look in my show notes. I am also the self-published author of 5 other books. One is fiction, romantic suspense as well, or I call them romantic thrillers. And then I have 4 little nonfiction ebooks as well. And I have another nonfiction weight loss book brewing within me, so stay tuned for that. That is on the horizon. So was I able to quit my retail management day job to be a full-time author? Obviously not. But I'm totally okay with that now, because I began pursuing my dream of doing what I'm passionate about full-time. And by starting to follow that dream, I discovered so much more about who I really am as a person. And part of that journey was discovering that I wanted to do really important things in the world. I discovered I wanted to make some changes in my life, and one of those changes led me to discover life coaching. And so I became a client. I became a life coach client to other coaches and took some of their classes and became coached directly by them. And I found it so tremendously valued that I decided I wanted to help others like I had been helped. It made such a difference in my life. So I became a life coach too. Or more specifically, I call myself a creative empowerment coach, because I want to empower you to learn what I learned. That our lives are a gift, and we get to decide how we want to live them. So my dream of publication led me to a completely different dream. And I've been so enriched by both of those dreams. And I want to help make the world a happier and more peaceful place by helping my clients become happier and more peaceful within themselves. And so every message I send out on social media is guided by one of these principles. 1, is it true to who I am? 2, is it uplifting or comforting? 3, is it fun or just funny? Because I'm a total goofball who loves making people smile and laugh. I'm also a huge nerd, so you'll see some of that kind of stuff being shared. Or 4, does it bring more joy into this world? And as long as I follow these rules or guidelines that I totally developed for myself, I feel good. And that's really what possibility boils down to. We were all given endless possibilities so we can enjoy this life. We want to feel good, and by feeling good, we stay connected to ourselves and to that higher power within us. And as one of my mentors and coaches, Kelly Cooper, would say, what we're all after is a feeling. We want to feel good, or at least better. So think about one aspect of your life that isn't currently up to par. What can you change that would make that thing even a little bit better? Think of each possibility and do the one that feels the best to you. And if you need more guidance on this, I'm currently taking on new one-on-one coaching clients. And if these podcasts or posts resonate with you, I would welcome you to sign up for a free mini session with me, and I'll put the link to that in the show notes as well. I'm looking so forward to hearing from you, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope that this post and podcast was helpful to you. And as always, I want you to have an empowered day, week, month, and year. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for listening to the Create Your Empowered Self podcast. If you've enjoyed this content or found it helpful, please let me know by leaving a review. I upload podcasts every Wednesday and Saturday, so subscribe to receive these regular updates. Now, go out there and live a more empowered life.